Good afternoon. Welcome to Smart Talk. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to again on the program focus on what's happening in the land of Israel. And our guest today is Dr. Melissa Kronfeld. She is a professor, a scholar, a teacher. She leads High on the Har, an organization dedicated to the Temple Mount. She's been a guest on our program before. Dr. Kronfeld, welcome back to Smart Talk.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to visit with you. We're friends. You're friends with my wife. And so before we ask the professional question we're going to ask you as a friend of this program, it's a personal burden for all of our Israeli friends, and people in Texas that are distant and aren't as connected as we are can't really grasp that. So just give us a sense of how the whole nation is still in grief.
Yeah, I would, it's an interesting time, and I use the word interesting because it's hard to find another word. Generally, when you read about Israel and you read about the specific kind of 2 weeks in Israel, you often, if you go online and read like a TripAdvisor or something, it will say in Israel on Yom HaShoah, the country becomes very solemn before they move into a little bit more solemnness with Yom HaZikaron, or the day that we remember our fallen from the IDF and terrorist attacks and those who have served on behalf of the state of Israel. And then immediately at sunset on Yom HaZikaron, we move into Yom HaAtzmaut, which is our Israeli Independence Day. But and generally, you really feel that here in Israel. You feel it. Yom HaShoah comes and you reflect on how I'm a Jew and I have come from this heritage and this legacy of the Holocaust, and we're here. And I'm so sad for those who have fought and died. And then, wow, but we're independent. But I can't. It's been very difficult this past week, and I'm sure it'll be more difficult next week. Kind of putting myself, honoring and memorializing when we're still. And me personally, still very much traumatized by the events of 7 months ago. It's hard to. I wrote to someone the other day. It's hard to reflect on the Holocaust of 70 odd years ago when I'm still experiencing my Holocaust of 7 months ago.
So your organization, High on the Har, and others, you're working very hard to continue the mission. Though the IDF is still fighting and there are 132 hostages still being held, yet your mission, I think your calling from the Lord, has to continue. How are you able to move forward while also living through the hell of the aftermath of October 7th?
Well, that's a much easier question actually to answer than you may think, because it was our Muslim brothers and sisters in the Palestinian territories who elected the Hamas government and chose to permit them, and many civilians joined them on October 7th, to invade our country and kill our people. And they decided that this war, this invasion, this attack, this genocide was going to be in the name of Al-Aqsa, the name of their mosque that they built in conquest thousands of years after our temple stood. And so the carrying on the fight on the Har is much easier because I'm not a soldier. I arrived in Israel too late. I am an Olim, or someone who immigrated to Israel, and so for me, this is my battlefield. Not only because this has been my battlefield for the past few years since I started my organization, but more importantly is that our enemy declared that this was the battlefield. This is the primary battlefield on the war, and so wherein my heart aches. For my brothers and sisters who are fighting in Gaza right now, and I know many of them, and my own partner at my own foundation, is fighting up north. And everyone has a job to do, but at the end of the day, there's zero doubt. I am 100% clear. I have clarity beyond measure that we are serving on the battlefield that matters most. The gains that we make in Gaza, the gains that we make up north, and the protection and defense of Judea and Samaria is, of course, critical for the physical security of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. But the fact of the matter is that the true war, the true battlefield is on the Temple Mount. And so, wherein I don't get to wear a uniform or carry a gun, I feel, it sounds strange, and I feel blessed each and every single day that God asked me to serve here on the Temple Mount, because this is where the war will be won or lost.
So how are the people being able to focus on things like the Temple Mount, which is a hugely important issue, but both Israelis and the very few foreigners who are visiting the country at this time, if everyone is consumed by the daily news of the hostages and the war, how are they focusing on other things?
Well, right now everyone has a job to do, right? And so I want my friends and brothers and sisters in uniform around the country to be focused on, as they say in America, killing bad guys and breaking things wherever that they are, and allow us to be consumed with the Temple Mount. Temple Mount is a unique place, right? And you know as well as I do that it's not for everybody, and there's a range of reasons that we don't even need to speak about why. It will one day be, but it's not a place for everyone. And so, kind of like I used to teach terrorism studies at Rutgers University as part of my international relations class, and I'd say the biggest misconception people have about terrorism is that these people are crazy or dumb, and in fact, they're usually the smartest and least crazy people in the room, right? Why? Is when you need something important done, say in your church or at your workplace, do you pick the dumbest staff member or the craziest one? No, you pick the one you can depend on most. And that is why we generally see higher rates of education, marriage, children among terrorists, especially suicide terrorists around the world. And that's a fact. And so I think that really that not everyone should be focused on the Temple Mount right now. It should be left to those of us who understand the gravity of what Hamas did by electing the Temple Mount to be the central battlefield, and allowing those of us who have been serving up there and know the ins and outs and know where we can push and know what needs to be done up there to focus on that. And I will say one of the most interesting things about the past few months is that it may not be unsurprising to your audience, but there has been an explosion of interest in the Temple Mount, and wherein numbers of people ascending may have decreased as a relative factor of less tourism. The amount of interest has skyrocketed. I receive anywhere between 15 to 20 emails a day, people subscribing to our listserv, shopping in our store, asking me questions. We've seen an explosion of followers on social media. And most importantly, I think for me personally, is that we've seen an explosion of interest among Israelis. Now, that does not mean every Israeli is ascending, but I am getting more and more and more requests and questions. And we recently started an event that occurs on Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month, that's not on the Temple Mount, because it occurred to me that, if I ask you to come learn about the Temple Mount on the Temple Mount, well, that's not going to work. And so we recently started a Rosh Chodesh lunch where we tell people, you don't need to come up with us on Rosh Chodesh, but join us for lunch after. Meet the people who ascend, ask your questions, have fun, enjoy a beer and a burger on us. And it has been a really huge success. And people, it is inspired to bring out exactly the people that I wanted it to. People who, maybe tepid, don't want to go, don't know who to ask questions to, and they come and they meet this incredible group of people that have gathered around High on the Har. And it's really amazing. I think we're going to grow from there. But going to the original question is that I don't, just like in any war, you don't want everyone worried about everything. I'm going to leave Rafah to our soldiers, and I hope our soldiers trust that they can leave the Temple Mount to me.
My guest on Smart Talk right now is Dr. Melissa Kronfeld, joining us on the telephone from Israel. And Melissa, our audience probably can hear you are an American by birth, New Yorker, as a matter of fact, and now an Israeli citizen living there in the Holy Land. So you are two sides, an American and an Israeli. How do you feel when we wonder if America is actually going to stand with Israel in this time of need?
So I get that question a lot, and mostly because, as you mentioned before, I was a professor, and this was, history and international relations, my field of expertise. And I have said long before this happened that Israel and people who care, about Israel and the Jewish people need to separate the relationship from America as an entity and a government, and Israel, and from their own personal commitment to the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Because if you look, this is a matter of fact, okay? It was Harry Truman who was the first national leader to recognize the state of Israel. He went against his own State Department. He didn't even tell the Defense Department. Right? He did not inform his own government before he went and made the announcement, because his best friend was Jewish. And he grew up, with his best friend Jewish, and he was totally in favor of it. But the fact of the matter is that America has not been the longest term ally of the United States. It has probably been its best ally, its strongest ally, its most fruitful and productive ally. But it was only in the 1970s when Henry Kissinger served under President Nixon, who was also a great lover of Israel and an often misunderstood president, that American foreign policy became pro-Israel. So we're talking about a very short period of time, relatively, in the history of the Jewish people, right? Which is from the dawn of creation till now. And so I have always been of the belief that we need to, first of all, be cautious with any ally, right? Because state interests change all the time. But the fact of the matter is that America has been a short-term ally of Israel, and it has never been lost on me that it may not always be that way. Right now, of course, governments come and go, people come and go, but we're not just seeing a shift in government policy. We're seeing a shift across America about views on Israel. Again, also not surprising. History of the Jewish people. Every 100 years, they come and get us, and that's just a matter of fact. Go back, from the destruction of the Second Temple through to today, and you'll find every 100 to 120 years there's a calamitous event for the Jewish people. And so I really, and your listening audience, who I know is very pro-Israel, I urge them to find their own space, to be pro-Israel, to engage in Israel, the policy, to visit Israel, to support the Jewish people, and it doesn't always have to be in the context of or reflect the government policy, because unfortunately, government policy is consistent of lots of people, and many of those people are reflecting the views of the people they represent. And so we're seeing that shift. But with all of that said, I would say that is why this upcoming election is extremely important. Whether or not you are a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, non-affiliated, or an independent, if you care about Israel, and I'm not advocating for voting here, but if you care about Israel, and I won't say who's who, there is a candidate who has said, I will not protect Israel. And there is a candidate who said he will. It's black and white. The decision is yours. If Israel ranks among the most important priorities for you when you vote, as it does for me, well, then there's, the choice has been made. And what Biden has said the other day, that he's not going to send Israel necessary weapons because he fears that we're going to use it in Rafah, which, by the way, is already undergoing. I've been feeling the bombing all day long from my own apartment in Tel Aviv, traveling up the coast, have been for days. It's a patent absurdity. It's a patent absurdity, and it's frightening. It's frightening that we have somebody in office who believes that on two levels. One, because that's not what I thought the American president would ever say about Israel. But two, you have to stop and wonder, given all that we've seen on television and all the concerns that maybe there are, the president, unfortunately, is being influenced by all these people around him. Where is this policy coming from? Where are these ideas coming from? I never took Biden to be one. I never would have expected President Biden, of all people, to have come out with this. He's not ever been anti-Israel. So where is this coming from? And so whether you're voting in a local election, a state election, or the federal elections, and you care about Israel, find out what your candidate thinks about Israel. Because if you don't realize by now, every single congressman and senator matters more than ever, because these votes are very, very, the vote margins are very slim. And Israel needs America's support. And without it, we'll survive. But that means what will happen is America will have to turn to other allies. And is that what Americans, not the American government, is that what Americans want to see? See a world where Israel is, best friends with Putin or India or China? Is that an alliance, a system that really will continue to perpetuate this amazing experiment in democracy that we've spent the past 200 years building?
I'm visiting with Dr. Melissa Kronfeld on Smart Talk today. She leads On The Har. You should find them on social media and online. Melissa, you've been a student or a professor. You've been on college campuses for a whole bunch of years in your life. What is happening on college campuses, not just in America, but around the world? Why are the anti-Israel protests seemingly becoming so frequent and so virulent?
So, I was fortunate enough that I kind of did this kind of what is, broadly labeled as this kind of woke or progressive college movement, where we're seeing these students adopt ideologies and beliefs that, when in your 40s, you look at it and go, that's just craziness, you're 20-year-old, that's just insane. And I caught the tail end of that. I spent 17 years in higher education, not teaching, learning. Yeah, I'm well overeducated. And I caught the tail end of it. And so it is not, first of all, it does not surprise me at all that it is easy in your 18 to 25 years of age to be wrapped up in something, right? I was very passionate about certain causes that I have not changed my opinion on completely, but have made very, very big changes in how I would approach some of these issues now. Human trafficking, modern slavery being one of them. My views on that, obviously it's horrible and awful, and I spent 10 years fighting it, but how I would fight it now is very different than how I would have fought it 15 years ago when I was actually in the middle of the fight. And that just comes with wisdom and age. But this has always been there. I remember when I was at Rutgers University, which has a massive, Rutgers University is the largest American Palestinian population on a college campus in America, because there's a huge Palestinian Arab population in Newark, where I was on the campus. And I can tell you that Apartheid Week, which was very popular at Rutgers, was a horrific week. This was going on 20 years ago. The difference is it didn't make the news. I remember they said the students, the Muslim Student Association, funded by Qatar then and now, set up a fake checkpoint on campus. And I guess they didn't realize I was a professor. I was a very young professor. I was only 31 when I was professoring, or lecturing, I should say. I didn't have full professorship. And they stopped me and tried to, I'm a Zionist, entity, and you can't cross until you show your ID. And I wound up calling the police on the student to teach him a lesson. I called the police and I said, I'm being detained. I think I may be kidnapped. Now, of course, it was a bit of a stretch, but I wanted to prove a lesson because students had gathered, people were watching, and the student needed to understand that this kind of policy and action was unacceptable. Who got in trouble in the end? I think your viewers can guess it wasn't the student. So the difference is now is that the movement has grown stronger. The tactics have grown better. They have recruited LGBTQ community to my great dismay, because it's a community that I've part of the equal rights movement, and those rights would not be afforded to them in the Arab world. They've taken on the Black and Brown rights community, which is also to my great dismay, because our Black and Brown Americans have more rights and are doing better now, say, in America than any time in history and in any other country in the world. And so what it really boils down to, it's a numbers game and it's a funding game. The Qatar and these other Arab terrorist entities have been funding these movements so long, training these people so well, that like any movement, it has become and solidified into its strongest, manifestation. And so what we're seeing now, this is 20 years in the making. And so no one should be surprised what they're seeing. What I will ask are, where are the parents? Where are the parents of these kids? Because we know that the vast majority of Americans, by polling data, like over 40, over 50, are generally not anti-Israel. They're generally mostly, I still look at the numbers have gone down, right? But we know, especially after the war, we were talking about 70, 80% of Americans were in favor of Israel fighting in Gaza. So where are the parents? The children on campus, 18-year-olds under 25 in America are not a majority the way they are in other countries, right? We have an aging population. America has a much higher population of people over 60 than under 60, right? That may be a little bit off, but you know what I mean? We have an older population metric than most countries. Where are the parents? Where are the parents telling their children, this is absurd, and then explaining to them why? Just because your kid is 19, 20, 21 years old, you're still their mother and father. You can still call them up and say, I don't like what you're doing. And I think we should have a conversation about these actions, about Israel. I think we should talk to other people. Where are the parents? That's what bothers me most. I know that if my kid, was doing this, I would march my butt down, stick a pin in their tent and drag their butt home for a few weeks. But, so I ask your audience, if you know people whose kids are in college doing these things and the parents are dismayed, well, you're still their parent. We can do something. We can do something. We are not at a loss. And that's the one thing that I've not seen on the news that's really been bothering me lately, is that it just seems so unhinged and so uncontrolled. And all of these kids have families and friends who I know must feel otherwise. Where are the communities around these children? And I use the word children because that's what they are, no matter how old they are. Where are their communities stepping in and saying, this is not right, you were not raised this way, I don't accept this, and we need to work this out as a community, as a family, in our church, at our shul, whatever it is, because we know that there are plenty of Jewish students who are joining these anti-Israel protests.
And the pastor's going to ask our Jewish friend the final question for our Christian audience. How can we be praying? How can the American Christian community stand with Israel in this time?
I think the most important thing that we need to pray for right now, one, the safety and security of our men and women across the country. Two, for wisdom for our government to make the right decisions, right? And most importantly, 3, the coming of the Mashiach. People, to me, that has and always will be the solution. And he will only come when we're ready, and clearly we're not ready. But by investing in prayer, that we know that the Torah is very clear that if we pray for a redemption, we can hasten it. So obviously we're not praying enough for it. And so for me, pray that our redemption comes, whatever that looks like, however you conceive it. But we all agree, Christians and Jews alike, that starts with the coming of a leader, a man of great strength, great insight, great Torah, who will secure our country, reteach us our faith, recommit us to our faith, keep us safe, and most importantly, inspire the world to believe once again that Israel is a light unto the nation.
And I'll say amen to all of that. And I'll ask you as
Amen.
we conclude, tell our folks how they can learn more about High on the Har.
Great. Well, you can follow us across all social media at hionthehar.com. You may even find us on a lot of other Arab news outlets that become very popular lately across Arab news platforms. And of course, always online at hionthehar.com. Everything is the same: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, social media, Instagram, TikTok. And if you want to reach out, ask me a question personally, you want to find out more information, you just want to send a prayer, we even have a page on our website where you can just send us your prayers, and we will print them out and we will take them to our minyan, to our prayer service every Sunday on the Temple Mount. But if you go to our website, sign up or send us a message or send us a prayer, I personally respond to every single message that comes in through our website, because I'm so grateful for the support. And so please come visit us online. Go, follow us on social media, share our content, because people are looking for this right now. And we are the only organization in the whole world that focuses on the Temple Mount exclusively in English. You're not going to find us anywhere else. We're the first, second, last, third, and final stop on the tour for Harabite for the Anglo world. So come get on the bus.
hionthehar.com. Our friend has been our guest today, Dr. Melissa Kronfeld, doing important work in the land of Israel. Follow them online. Visit her when you visit the land of Israel.
Please.
And Melissa, blessings, my friend. We pray for you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, and please send my love to your wonderful wife, Greta, who I miss and adore, and I look forward to seeing you both back home here in Israel you belong to.
That's going to do it for today's program. We do thank Dr. Melissa Kronfeld, who's in the middle of this spiritual battle, standing for light and truth, standing for the importance of the Temple Mount, and also standing with the people of Israel as they mourn the loss of those who were murdered on October the 7th, and praying for hostages to be released. Visit them, hionthehar.com. You'll get a lot of biblical education and learn about current events. hionthehar.com.